Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Awake with Lady. Today, I am joined by Vanessa Vega. She's an entrepreneur and has experienced not one, but two near death experiences. In 2017, a profound spiritual awakening changed her life, leading to deep insights, mystical encounters, and even a spontaneous healing. She's here to share her journey of transformation, divine connection, and guiding others on their path to awakening. Vanessa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, lady. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Happy, excited.
I normally like to start my conversations with my guests by asking them to share about their life before their particular experience. However, you have two near death experiences. The first
Correct.
one was when you were a baby. Do you remember anything about that experience? What happened? What was going on at that time?
Well, actually, I don't have a recollection. That memory came back to me after me having this spiritual awakening or STE that I had in 2017. By then, I was 51 years old. And although I knew about the event from hearing my parents telling me that I had lived that, but I had no physical recollection or memory, being so small, of the event or what was it that I experienced. But it was brought to my knowledge, as I say, during afterwards. I had this SDE so that I would connect and understand and bring sense and meaning to a lot of things that I had been living since I was a child. I used to astral travel all the time. As a child, I dreamt, and while I was dreaming, I would have these experiences where I left my body and I would see my body float, and I would experience different things. I would foresee different, I would experience different actual events that were going on in different parts of the world and outside the world. I would come back extremely scared and have this panic, when I saw myself falling from the sky and my soul like going back into my body, and my body would jolt, right? And when I came back, I was very extremely scared, that I wouldn't even dare to breathe because I thought that whatever was happening was so real that they were gonna grab me or do something to me, because the dreams that I had, or the experiences I had, I would see people being murdered. I would see things like that that were very harsh to experience at that young age. So I couldn't understand. But now that came to my awareness after this 2017 STE, all that memory came back to my awareness so that I would understand that because I had crossed over so early on, I had been in contact with that other side, that energetic side. All those experiences of my astral traveling and a lot of other things brought sense to it. I could finally connect the dots and understand that I had done this before, and that was why all these things, all these experiences that I had had since a child. It gave me a lot of understanding about my life particularly, so that I would know that I was an empath, for
Mhm.
example. And it brought a lot of sense, and, a lot of doubts that I had about my life came with a lot of clarity. I had a lot of clarity over my life.
I think it would make more sense so the viewers can understand everything that was going on. I think that it would make more sense to start by talking about your spiritual awakening in 2017 then. Tell me what was going on at the time. What was your situation?
Well, you see, I had been what it's called an overachiever. Okay. I would set myself to very high standards and very high goals, and I would actually achieve them in all areas of life. But once I would achieve, I would feel unfulfilled. Still feel like I felt empty. Empty is the best way, and unfulfilled, right? It wasn't enough. So I constantly constructed things, developed. I was very extremely creative. So I would create these wonderful things. And once I achieved them and I got what I wanted, I wasn't fulfilled enough. So I fell back into like depression, I would say, and still hadn't found what I was looking for, right? I wasn't feeling good inside. That's it. And so also my personal relationships were like that also. I've been married 3 times. I have 3 divorces. And so I would put a lot of energy into that and having, the perfect family, the white picket fence, things we normally want in life, but still wouldn't. Once I thought I had it, it would fail. So I got to this point in life. I was 51 and I had lost all faith in myself. I felt like a failure. And I couldn't understand, after doing so much and so fast in my life, accomplishing so much and so fast in my life, how what I had done wrong, because my intentions always were the best, right? And to do it to the best of my ability and so I had invested so much and I couldn't comprehend where I had made the wrong turn and to where I was at that moment, because definitely my life had come to this place, dark place, where I felt like everything in my life was being tested. My family, my finances, my businesses, everything was being tested at the same time. So I felt I had failed in life and I lost the faith in myself. I had been battling for 15 years since my first marriage. I had been battling with anxiety and depression disorders, always trying, fighting, and striving, right? And I would build and I would do, and everything would fall back down, everything. So I was very frustrated. I had a lot of turmoil inside, a lot of mixed emotions. I felt very lost, very lonely, just didn't know how to deal with where I was at that time. And I used to pray because I was brought up by Christian missionaries. I used to study in American school here in Puerto Rico. And so I did have faith, right? I thought at that moment I had my faith. Not that I was a constant, used to practice it constantly, but inside me, I always felt something special, right? And so this day, every day, I woke up and I was praying. I decided to pray because I had an upcoming court proceeding that I was very anxious about, and I was very emotional. And I decided this day somehow to pray like in a different way that I had ever prayed. Because before that, the prayers were like the normal thing you do them. Like this one was different because it was like a honest, a very authentic and honest like conversation
I
about,
understand.
yes,
It's like
about
when you pray, it's as if it was before an autopilot, like something you just did. But
exact.
this particular time, you felt it deep in your core.
Yes,
Yeah.
every single thing that I was saying, and it was a conversation. I was feeling this loss, and I said it right. I said, I feel lost. I need help. I feel like I expressed how I was feeling very honestly. As I was conveying all this, something came immediately into my mind, and I said, I want to surrender. I said those words. Actually, said them out loud. Eh, I want to surrender. I don't want to control, and I'm not gonna control. And I'm not gonna make another decision. I want to be guided. I need help. So as I said those words, immediately, it was like turning a switch on and off. Immediately as I said those words and I gave that permission, right? And I said, I surrender. And I truly felt surrendering. Immediately, I felt this like, oh my God, a million thousand bolt, light bolt hit me, a lightning bolt. And as it hit me, I heard a voice, powerful voice, an authoritative voice, tell me, Vanessa, throw yourself to the ground. I want to speak to you. And my body literally didn't process. There was no thought process. This was a knowing. Immediately, my body jumped from the bed. And actually, it happened here where we're speaking right now. This is my place to do the videos, the interviews, because the computer is just on top of where this happened. So I threw myself. My body was jolted from the bed to the ground. My hands, palms were touching the ground, and my knees also. And I felt this reverence. I wouldn't dare to raise my head up. And all this energy that I was feeling, this vibration that I was feeling, it was so powerful, yet it was addicting and addictive. I would say I was hyperventilating. I couldn't breathe. I felt like everything, oh my God, were being extracted through my mouth out. I was sobbing. But as this was going on with my body, my consciousness was cracked, literally opened, and I felt the tetheredness or the oneness of the whole universe, of the whole universal field. If you want to call it God, that's what I call it. I became one with this light, okay? I became one with that light. And all the knowledge that was within that light was within myself. So I knew immediately who this was, what this was, and it became very evident the inherent nature, true nature of mankind. My nature was too. And it was that I was light and that there was no actual separation between God, what we have called God, and ourselves, and that God is light. That's what God is, sentient light, the sum of all sentient light. And at the same time, that all this knowledge, I felt like the whole entire scientific wise about energy and light, all this knowing and how it interacts. It is our innate raw material and how it interacts with our body and how it affects our body and how we use it because we all have it within ourselves, how significant that is in our life and that we're not aware that we are it, that that's what we are. And that God is not separated from us. Never, ever. It cannot be. And so the knowledge that we never can die, right? That this light emits both energy, it has forces that emits energy, and those forces are vibration and frequency, and that vibration and frequency translates for us humans into energy in motion, emotions. And that because I was so low in my hoarded emotions coming from my childhood, things unresolved and undealt emotions that I had been accumulating since childhood. And how had this was that had driven my life to the point where I was right now, the significance of keeping our bodies clean and purging this vibration from inside ourselves, because this is the magnetic force with which we all humans create our reality. We pull in with that magnet, with our emotions, we pull in into solidity our reality and how we create with that. And how important, because I was told all this, I was being spoken to, okay? and all the questions I had ever had or could have were answered in during that experience. Okay, I was being told that it's how important it was for me to keep these energies out and face them and truly face them, and how purging them from the body was so important because as yes, I carried this frequency, and this frequency, as I was feeling, was tethered to the rest of everything else, and that was what I was contributing.
And just to clarify here, Vanessa, when you say these
Uh-huh.
frequencies, are you referring to unhealed traumas from the past, unhealed emotions
Yes.
from childhood?
Yes, as I said, I could understand that vibration, light, has frequency within it. That's why it's sentient. It is alive. It feels. So vibration and frequency, vibrational frequency translates for us into feelings, sensations, and emotions, not thought. On the other side, we don't have a brain. Thoughts belong to a brain. Okay, what exists is consciousness or awareness, and that's what light is made of: pure consciousness, pure information. That's what light, knowledge, truth. All these things are the same thing. Okay, truth, pure truth, knowledge, consciousness are all the same. That's why we say we're enlightened. When we reach that point where all knowledge is within us and where we become wisdom itself, right? It is vibrating, it is alive. And by its vibration is expressed through us in terms of feeling, sensations, and emotions. And I could understand how emotions are the only common ground between the spiritual and the physical realm. And when we are aware, when we become aware of we work, we're consciously working on our emotional bodies and our frequencies, we are closest to God. And how important it was to, instead of hoarding resentment, anger, frustration, all these things that humans do have, that was what differentiated us from the divine. Okay, because the divine light only vibrates to one emotion, which is love, which is the highest frequency. Love carries the highest frequency of all. And so we're expressions of that one, right? But we have, as you know, a plethora of those emotions. We are learning to transform all that plethora of emotions that we carry into the one. So that's what we're doing. We are learning to transform our emotions, our plethora of emotions, into one emotion so that we're able to merge, fully merge into one light and love, into the divine's one love and light. And all this experience, obviously, I was there. I know, I felt very minuscule. It's not even an ant. I don't know if there's something smaller than that, but I felt be, before this energy, right? Very extremely touched, extremely humbled, grateful beyond words, because I felt the love, right? The love coming and the acceptance of where I was. And I know it was very, very extremely present for me, right? How low I was vibrating. And he told me like that. He said, Vanessa, I need you to be pristine in your frequency, your vibration, emotions, because when you are, that's what you're contributing to me. You compose me, and I am in you. and your vibration affects the whole. So I need you to be clean, and I could see that what he was doing, he was cleansing me. Okay. I was receiving this healing. He was cleansing and healing all this low frequency I had been carrying for such a long time. And so I felt pain in my body, but it was a pain that I actually liked, and it was ecstasy, total absolute ecstasy, what I was feeling. And as I was sobbing there, right here in the ground, I could feel, right, all this going on. And at the same time, all the knowledge and instructions he was giving me, and things that I didn't even know how I knew, right? We never die because of this that I'm saying, because you can never stop the atoms from vibrating. No one can. And that vibration is life at its best. But our energetic body, our soul, keeps on feeling, and feeling, sensing, and emoting. This quote also came into my, my consciousness about that life is never about the identity we carry, never, and all about the purposes of the soul. So it's never about the purposes of the identity we carry. It's always about the purposes of the soul, and that our identity is the experience that the soul chooses, that will provide him with the set of lessons and circumstances that the soul is pursuing during a lifetime. So life is never about this, about Vanessa. Vanessa is just one perspective of my soul, of my multidimensional soul. Okay. I've been many people. Okay. I've had many identities. And right now I was experiencing this one as Vanessa because this one was bringing me a knowledge that I didn't have, that my soul needed to acquire, and that it definitely didn't have before. So everything in my life took meaning, right? And value, things that I had experienced, very bad things that I had experienced, because I have lived a lot of things, very harsh things, okay? And so all those things that I used to see that had driven me to where my emotions were at this time took a different perspective. I could see the true value, soul value that those experiences had had. And for the first time, I have felt gratitude for them, because I know life, I live my life through the lenses of my soul, not the lenses of the person that I am. And so, and I try to give as much as I can because I know I'm here, okay? And I have to live this life, but I see beyond the meat suits that we carry. And I know that everything in a person's life has huge value and huge purpose to that which we truly are, which is a soul. We are souls, and our energy never will stop feeling, emoting, and therefore being alive and aware, conscious. So that's why NDEs express, right, that many of them see their bodies there and they're confused. They say, but how can I be here? I'm feeling here, everything I'm experiencing here, and my body is there. Well, this is the reason. Your soul is the one living, truly living. Your atoms are alive. It's the vibration. We have always thought this became, I was very confronted with all this science, biology, physics, quantum physics, chemistry, everything. All that knowledge came into my consciousness as to know that the atom, our building block, right, is the one, truly the one that bears life in it and brings life to the human body, and consciousness both. Because we cannot, the atom, for example, knows what to bond with to conform a molecule of oxygen and all the elements of the periodic table. Nobody tells him what he needs to do that. Okay, nobody from the outside. It carries the intelligence, the AI, and it's not artificial. I call it authentic intelligence or autonomic intelligence, and it knows without nobody instructing it on what it needs to do. And so molecules also have that intelligence within them. And that's how our bodies and everything that has matter or solidity to it comes to be, because there's physical matter and there's also matter that we cannot see. And that's what atoms are. We cannot see an atom. That's why we cannot see our spiritual body or our soul, because it's made out of atoms, energy. But energy cannot be destroyed. And it is sentient and it is conscious because it's moving, it's vibrating, it has movement. So it is alive. And it has consciousness because it knows what it needs to do. And then in the human body, when it expresses in our biology, which is a product, biology is a product, it's not fundamental. Quantum physics is fundamental, but biology is not. Biology is a product of quantum physics. And so we've always studied life from biology. So we've started in a false foundation because that's not where life starts. Life starts again with vibration, vibration. That's where life starts. And so we parted our knowledge, and we've been under the impression all this time, false impression, that biology is what grants life to our body when it is not the truth. And so, for example, the atom filled sperm cell also in our biology, in our DNA, knows what it needs to do without instruction. This is not the brain telling the sperm cell, and this is proven by science, okay? No one is instructing the sperm cell on what he needs to do, but this is the job, specific job, and he knows what he needs to do. All of them know. And so it fertilizes, it looks for the egg, right? And at the moment the egg is fertilized, at the split second, the ovum sparks with light as to remind us our true nature and make. And the sparkle of light begins. And then again, the ovum, which divides into many, many cells, which are called a cystoblast, just like cystoblast, and goes throughout all its phases, right? Divides itself and knows what it needs to do without the instruction. Again, and always with the conductivity of water or fluid. Why? Well, because light, the best conductor of electricity, let's say, or energy, is water. So it's not a coincidence that we're born out of water. And all this knowledge, as I said, about energy and how it works in our body, and where does consciousness, how it manifests into physical form in our body, and what to know, all this scientific knowledge about how we acquire diseases, because this was the next thing that I came in my experience, came confronted with, because while I was here, uh, having my experience, this experience lasted about 2 hours when I dared to open just a little bit my eyes, just a little bit, and I saw that I wasn't touching, my hands weren't touching the ground. And that's how I know how profound this was for me, right? Because here I was alone, being healed, and I felt it in every atom and every single cell of my body being healed from all this low vibration that I had been carrying. And immediately when the experience ended, the first thing I became aware is that the way that I was feeling now was totally, I knew I had been healed from depression and anxiety immediately. So that was the first spontaneous healing that I received. Here I was, I had been drinking pills for 15 years to sleep, for the anxiety, for the depression, none of that ever again. Not one pill ever again. I threw them all away that same split second. And I knew I didn't need them. I was totally healed. Just like that. I never felt lonely again because now I knew that the divine was within me at all time. I cannot be alone. There's no way. And I knew that the connectivity, how connected we were always. This was something very big for me specifically because I had always looked for God outside of me.
It's that's what we're taught in organized religion. Go outside, look for a man behind the clouds, like a an old grandpa with a white beard. That's
Yes,
God. It's not inside of you. So it's
exactly.
understandably so. I mean, it sounds to me, just to recap, that you were going through what I would call the dark night of the soul,
Yes.
in which everything, your life pretty much falls completely apart. Nothing works, and you find yourself having to rebuild. But correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you were following the same patterns at that time. And then you
No,
kept
definitely.
recreating the same. You kept recreating the
Eating.
same story. And
Exactly.
then once you came back from your experience, you realized the interconnectedness of spirit with us and everything around us.
It's correct. It is correct. And how I was the one creating, staying in that
Mhm,
same vibration and by feeding it, right? Feeding the anger, the fear, the anxiety, the preoccupation, everything, all these things that I was feeding, I was creating more of it because energy that you focus on, energy reacts to focus. And if I was focusing on being worried, for example, or feeling, well, I was going to create more
mhm,
of that. I was focusing on the negative aspects and creating more of that in my life because I was feeding that energy. And so I learned that when you totally turn your way back and say, no, I'm not going to even give it a single thought to that. When you retrieve all your
mhm.
energy from something, you end the problem from its root. You kill it there and there. Is so, and when you feed into positive things and you focus on what you truly desire to, you are changing totally the vibration that you are in. So I started to live like, actually, I say, and I say it vividly, I did die that day. At that day, I did die because the person that I am now, it's not who I was. Who I was, I can never, ever be again. As
Mhm,
much as I would try to be that, I cannot be because my consciousness now has a much wider knowledge, right? And I cannot undo it. It's just what it is. And I know now what I know, and I cannot undo that. So I'm not definitely the person that I was at that time. So Vanessa, as I was to that date, died, and I had a rebirth. And from there on, all my aside from receiving the healing, the first healing, right, and I could see that I had been sick because I had been feeding all this. So all my intuitive abilities or my psychic abilities, I would say, that I never knew or consciously knew that I had, they were heightened to levels that I never knew. So I could hear sounds, right,
mhm.
ringing, and I would know, I would start to, I was thrown what I call into, I call it a spiritual boot camp.
Let me
because
stop you for 1 second because I do want to talk about that. But before we go there, how did the memories of your near death experiences came back to you?
during this 8-year process, it had the experience never
Hmm.
has ended because I accepted this spiritual path that I'm in, right, of ascension. And I said yes. I was told that I had to do certain things. I was given instructions because I was going to be the catalyst for some miracles to happen. I made my questions like, how am I going to do that? Am I going to be able to do that? Right? Because my humanness put me in that doubt immediately. But I was answered. I am going to give you that strength. I am going to be there. So I said yes. And as I opened to this path in my life, I've had many experiences. My life has changed totally. And I live by this now. And so during this process, more as it developed in these years, more and more, I've had more and more quality of information coming into my consciousness and also things about myself. In one of those occasions, I had these divine conversations continuously. And so I was explained, they brought this memory. I was asking about all this that I experienced when I was a young girl in my childhood and things that I still had unanswered. And so the knowledge came into my consciousness about how these experiences at the age of 18 months, where I had choked with a diaper clamp. Because back on the time, my mother used to use cloth diapers. So they used to use metal clamp, like a half an inch. My mother was changing me, and back at those days, we didn't have the cellular phone. So she went to pick up the phone that was ringing, and she left me there. And so I grabbed one and put it in my mouth. And when she came back, I was blue. And so she went crazy, grabbed me by my ankles and started screaming and yanking me, shaking me so that I would vomit the clam, but nothing happened. And so all this process went on. They took me to the hospital where finally I arrived practically dead. I was revived, and so I vomited later the clamp. So I was brought to this one experience, and that was so early on. And that was for me to know that all this astral traveling that I did, that this was astral traveling. I didn't even know what astral traveling was, or spiritual awakening, or nothing like that. Those words were not in my consciousness. Okay. So for me, as a child, that was the way everybody used to dream. And that was normal for me. And so I understood that no, I was different, right? That dreams are not like this. That was my case because of the experience that I had had so early on
And you had this
after my
realization
ST.
after your STE. So your entire life, you grew up and you probably were talking to your family. Oh, I went to so and
I
so
don't
place. So this is what I saw.
actually, you'll be surprised to know that I even didn't tell them. I would not, because it was very traumatic. I even had a past life. And for example, I can share that I even had
Mhm.
past life memory come as in the medieval times. And as you know, medieval times, I was a man. As you know how harsh those warriors and those battles were. Okay, so there was a lot of blood, very extremely gruesome. And for a child, as I was so little experiencing that, it was horrible. I mean, the panic I felt, I cannot even express. My dreams were so vivid. I thought that these bad people were looking for me. So I would stay there and not move until I heard something in the house moving, but I wouldn't tell even my parents. And I wouldn't even dare to, babies get off the bed and go to their parents when they're dreaming like that. They would scream. But my panic was so, so strong. And I would just stay quiet and not even breathe. I wouldn't dare to breathe. And I wouldn't tell my parents that I was going through that. So I didn't share them. I later on became so accustomed to them that I just convinced myself that that was the way I dreamt, that it was dreaming. But I didn't share, like, I had this experience or that experience. Not that I remember sharing that in that way with my mother or my father, as for them to tell me, no, that you were dreaming. That's not, no, I would stay very quiet. I don't know if out of shame, honestly, I just know that I would not share those things. I didn't feel I could communicate that way with my parents, at least. So I did live a lot of, it was very traumatic. And then my childhood wasn't the best also. So I guess that had to do in certain way. Not that my parents are bad people or nothing like that. I don't like to judge them in any way, shape, or form, but we all are a product of that. And that has purpose in our life. And although I lived, let's say, especially with my mom, very harsh issues, I had a very conflicting upbringing, right? And I could see the significance of that life. My mom spent more time with us because my father was an entrepreneur also. So he was always out working, and my mother was more involved with the upbringing. And so my relationship with her was not ever a good one. She was quite a narcissistic parent. And so, okay, now I understand, and I can, out of the all the understanding and connectedness that I've, all the dots that I connected in my life, I can see the purpose behind that. I can understand the purpose behind that. And that gave me a lot of understanding and compassion for my mother. She has Alzheimer's now, and my heart, breaks to know that she's going to leave this world. Her soul is going to, without healing what she needed to heal. She didn't have the opportunity like I had now to become aware as I am how that happens, because those things start to show up. Our vibration. Okay, our vibration, since the soul never dies and it's pure vibrational frequency, it's pure emotion, we start seeing those things that we carry from other lifetimes, okay? Seeing them in our childhood. We're going to see that being experienced emotionally, and up to the age of 8 years old is where all our traumas are created. And then when we go through life not knowing that we have these traumas and that we're feeding into that energy, right? And that it is it energy keeps growing inside of us. Energy is in constant growth. We cannot stop energy from growing. So energy that we keep in and is not liberated, or emotions that are not properly dealt with and faced and purged, grow within our body. As within, so without. What we have within is going to be created. So we're going to keep recreating the emotional states that we had, if it's insecurity, fear, whatever, in expanded manner during the course of our adulthood and life. That's going to keep on repeating in patterns because energy behaves in patterns. And if we are not self aware of what went on and what caused that triggers when we were small, and we properly deal with that, that energy keeps growing within. We keep living, repeating the emotional states, not necessarily the same exact circumstances, although many people do, but the emotional states, emotional circumstances, yes, they keep expanding. expanding, expanding, until the body is not able to deal with all that it is experiencing inside, and it needs to be purged. And that's how we create all diseases. So all diseases have an emotional history to them that needs to be discovered by us so that we can heal those and release them from our body. And that's how we get ill, we acquire illness. We think that it is biology, and yes, it develops into it comes into physical or real physical form, right? By our biology, in our biology, but it comes from our energy, from our triggers, our core is energy. So everything starts there. Everything exists in its energetic form first, and then it develops or solidifies in physical form. That's the order. And that was the 13th universal law that was shared with me, because I was taught, I was, after this experience in my divine conversations that I kept having and receiving information about science and all this, I was explained about this, right? And how through our chakra system, I was taught about the importance of understanding energy, the language of energy through universal law, because energy is ruled by universal law. And it is a fixed behavior which speaks in vibration, behaves in patterns, behaves as within, so without, right? As above. So you are going to see that coherence, that repeatedness, right? What you see above, that's why what we see above in the cosmos, right? We see down here also, like for example, the universe expresses in cycles also, and in circle, how important the circle is. Circle, which is no beginning, no end. And how everything, right? The planets are, circular form, right? And the elliptical form that they travel in, and the translation they have is circular also, and stars and all this, right? And so our life is gonna also express in the same way, cycles, right? We see the weeks, we see the months, we see the years, and in our personal life, we see cycles of life that we go through as human beings also. And we see the seasons, right? Cycles. So everything is expressed. It's a conversation that I started learn this language, this specific language, and how to understand our innate nature so that I would apply that as a lifestyle for myself, and so that I could teach about universal law and the language of
Mhm.
energy.
Just to recap, you realized, or you had the awareness that you had a near death experience at the age of 18 months old.
Yes.
You grew up, you went on with your life, struggling with your dreams by yourself because you were not sharing your experiences. So, fast forward to when you were 16 years old. That's when you had your second near death experience.
Correct. Yeah.
Can you share that with us? What happened that day? Where were you? What were you doing?
Yeah. Well, actually, it was in Dominican Republic, your country, because I was traveling during vacation with my family. We were visiting these dear friends we have over there.